Hello, this is Tom from Knife Delights. Well, if you've clicked on this video, it's probably because you're wondering, how do I clean up that old knife? How do I refurbish it? Well, I do a lot of refurbishing video. I've cleaned up a lot of knives. It's something that I really enjoy doing. And I've had a lot of viewers ask me, what's the best way to restore or to refurbish my grandpa's knife and questions like that. And so I thought I'd really take some time in this video and do a really in-depth, step-by-step cleaning of this knife. Of course, one of the first steps you want to consider is, what is your goal with this knife? Do you want to restore it? And by that, we have to define it. Restoring to me means trying to bring it back to mint condition or bring it back into the condition it was in, when the knife was brand new and first came out. To preserve the knife means you're going to leave some character to the knife. You're not going to necessarily fix all the flaws, but you're going to get rid of the rust and the dirt and any other, oily junk that might be down inside the knife, whatever makes it look really ugly or unusable. And you're getting rid of that rust and all that other stuff so you can set it aside and preserve it. It's always a big question. How far do you go when working on the knife? So please make sure and check out my playlist. I have multitudes of videos there where I've refurbished knives. I use pretty much the same method when I restore a knife or preserve a knife. My way isn't always the best way. It's just what I've developed. It's a passion of mine to bring that old knife back to life again. Come up with your own methods. Use your own tools. See how you can do it. My number one rule of thumb is do no harm. Don't do any further harm to the knife. And secondly, for my outcome, is it better than when I started with it? Now, we use some things like mineral oil, rust remover, rubbing compound, things like that. There's an inherent risk in using each one of those materials and some of the methods I use. So my biggest suggestion to you is do like I did with this knife. Go out to an antique store, find the one with a broken blade or whatever, and it costs $1 or maybe $2, $3. Most antique stores have a place of old knives like that. Get a couple of those, work on those, see what works for you, and then you can apply it to that knife that you really want to restore. The last thing you want to do is damage a very expensive knife or damage a family heirloom. So take your time, enjoy this video. It's going to be a long one, but I encourage you to watch it throughout. If you have to watch it just 15 minutes at a time, that's fine, but there's a lot of stuff embedded throughout this video. So if you skip through it, which I understand why you might want to, you might miss some important information. So like eating an elephant, eat it one bite at a time. So enjoy, and please leave a comment below on what you think. And if you have any further questions, please don't be afraid to email me at knifedelights@gmail.com. So we'll see you in the International Recording Studio as we work on the knife. Hello and welcome to Knife Delights. Today we're going to work on restoring this old knife. I have lots of viewer requests asking me questions on what's the best way to restore a knife, and I thought I'd just take my time here and go, really step by step on how I clean and restore a knife. Now, when I get an email or get a question in the comments, I'll say, how do I start to restore Grandpa's knife or this knife or that knife? And it's awful hard to answer that when I don't see the knife. I don't see the condition of the knife. I don't know if there's any problems with the knife. So I want to just start out by saying, if you're not sure about any of the processes that I'll be showing you in this video, what I would highly recommend is you do just like I did with this knife here. Went to an antique store. This knife cost me $2. Usually in most of the antique stores, they'll have a pile of old knives. They might have broken blades, might be missing a cover, whatever, but it costs like $1 or $2 or something like that. So if you can find a knife similar to what you plan on restoring, get that $2 knife, go through these steps on that knife and learn on it, and then you can apply what you've learned before you start on that family heirloom or that really expensive knife. Real quickly, some don'ts. I do not recommend that you use any sandpaper or steel wool on the blades or on these bolsters, because it will leave it with scratches. Now, you can, if you use lots of different grits. I mean, we're getting down to the 1,000 and 2,000 grit, and a lot of time you can clean up those bolsters if the bolsters are ultra rusty. But just remember, again, if you got a family heirloom or you got a really expensive knife, I would not recommend using sandpaper on any of it. You need to look your knife over, see what kind of materials you have. And our first step, and the most recommended step that I can tell you, is to soak the knife in mineral oil. So let's just take a look at this knife here real quick, and we'll see here everything is metal. And these are covers here. We can repaint that black. It's just the black paint or the black papers come off of it. Mineral oil will not hurt anything on this knife. The only thing that I know of that mineral oil may affect is if you have wooden covers, like on a buck 112 or a buck 503 or something like that. If it has the wooden inlays, be careful using the mineral oil. I had one viewer tell me that he left his knife with the wooden covers in mineral oil overnight, and it really darkened the wood. So with all of this and all of these steps, go carefully, go slowly. I am confident with this one I could throw this knife here in mineral oil and leave it in there for a week, and it's not going to harm a thing. But, so let's just take a look at this knife. See, we got a lot of rust on that blade, a lot of rust there, lots of rust there. We can just really see this rust. So that's the first thing. You just kind of observe and see what you've got, what you're starting with. Next thing that I would do is I check down in here before I do any soaking. And let me get my flashlight here. And you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff down in there. Pocket lint and other things. So we can get down in there. You can take a small screwdriver. I've had people suggest the use of pipe cleaners. There's all kinds of different things you can use, but just initially I want to get most of this out of there. So yeah, as you can see, scraping out a lot of that stuff. Now on a rusty old knife like this, I would typically start out by throwing it into some rust remover. But I realize a lot of you viewers might only have one knife that you want to restore, and you don't want to spend $30 on a gallon of rust remover. That's why, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to just start out by throwing it in some nice clean mineral oil. And this is Equate mineral oil, bought at Walmart. I don't know the current price, but it used to be around $2 or something for this. As you can see, the mineral oil is actually used as a laxative, so obviously this is skin safe. So you can get an old butter tub like this, pour some mineral oil in there, and I'm going to let this soak for a while and we'll see what the results are. I think you'll be amazed. Just let's look at this walk and talk for instance. This blade has no walk and talk to it at all. Hopefully the mineral oil will help to restore some of that. So this is something that is very simple, very inexpensive, and it really does work. Mineral oil, I swear by it. So let's throw it in there and let's just let it soak. Okay, for the purposes of this video, to keep things moving along, I only let this soak for about an hour. And one step I didn't show you is when I take it out of the mineral oil, I have a strainer sitting on top of a coffee can, and I put it in the strainer, and you can let it drip dry. You can leave it there a day or however long, but for the purposes of this video, I'm kind of moving along with it. But it kind of helps to let it drip dry just a little bit. So now we can clean. And you can see right off the bat there, that shield is looking a lot better right there. There's some patina, but it's not really rust. So again, one thing, there is a difference for me, a difference between a restoration and a preservation. To restore the knife, in my mind, it means you're trying to get it back to, what do you want to say, mint condition or showroom, or how the knife looked when it was brand new. That is different than a preservation, where you're just trying to get rid of the rust. You're not necessarily trying to get it all super cleaned up. You want to leave some patina on it maybe, you know, to show some character of the knife. So the great thing about the mineral oil, again, after you check your covers and check and make sure it looks like it's safe, once, you know, just soaking this in the mineral oil, even if I put it up in this condition right now, we are stopping further deterioration of the knife. Maybe you don't have a lot of time to work on it at the moment. It's going to be a couple months before you can get to your project. Just doing this sure helps. You can see how much that rust we're wiping off just like this. Now these paper towels, I bought these in a farm and home store. They're more of a shop towel. This is a messy process, so you want to have plenty of towels, paper towels. Now you can see it looks better already, but we got a lot of ways to go. Now I use like a sonic cleaner to put it down in and use that. If you don't have, you know, a sonic cleaner, what you can do is get yourself a bowl of water. Let's say you had a bunch of dirt and crud and stuff on your covers, or down here in the channels. You can take just a little bowl of water, warm water, and some Dawn dishwashing liquid, and you can soak it in that, and that will help. Then you can take a toothbrush and use your toothbrush to clean and scrub. One thing I like to do down here in the channels when they're really rusty, this is the one place I do use sandpaper. Let's see if we can wipe out some of that oil down in there. Now these are just cleaning patches that you can find in any sporting goods store. And again, you can use a pipe cleaner if you want. You can see how we're getting some of that stuff out of there already. Makes a world of difference, just a little mineral oil soak. If you don't want to fully submerge the knife in mineral oil, we have a handy little knife lube container here made by LCK Knives on Etsy, Last Chance Knives. And you can take this and squirt down in there, or, you know, fill the channels down in there full of this and let it soak if you don't want to submerge the whole thing. So here's our benefits. Hopefully we'll get some snap back here. There, we got some snap to this blade here. Again, if you don't have like a Dremel tool, which I'll be showing later on here, one of the best things you can do to try to get back that walk and talk, now that you got it oiled up, is just to open and close the blade. And by doing that, if you look right here, these are the back springs. This is the back spring right here. You can see all that rust and crud on there. You can actually just take and scrape on that if it's heavily rusted like this one. Just take and scrub on that, because that will affect your walk and talk. Now on this blade, we can see there, we got it basically halfway open. You see that spring is not rising up. It may be that it's worn in there, and if that's worn off from use, you know, opening and closing, you won't get any walk and talk back. There's just not much you can do about it if it's worn off. But you see that dirty oil coming out right there on the tang? So you just keep working it. See, you got some more of that dirty oil out. You're cleaning it off just by opening and closing. See, it's a messy. But the good thing is, again, the mineral oil is skin safe. So we can see what a difference this has made already. And we can see there's some patent numbers down in there. The patent number, you can help identify the age of the knife going on those patent numbers. I did do a video on that, how to identify or to help date your knife based off of patent numbers. Okay, that was just an hour of soaking, and it makes a world of difference just doing that. Okay, since I do happen to have a rust cleaner that I've been using, let me get a tub of that over here, and we'll throw this into that rust remover. Okay, the product I'm using here is WD-40 Rust Remover Soak. It says dissolves rust safely. I've also used another product called Evapo Rust, and both of these seem to work pretty good. So you can just get yourself a little plastic bowl here. Now again, I'm going to caution you. Be careful of what kind of handle material or cover materials you have. Now this being all metal, the Evapo Rust isn't going to harm anything, other than the longer you let it soak, it will darken these blades. But that's okay, because we're going to be cleaning them off anyway, and you can remove that. But if, again, I've used this in bone covers or bone inlays. If you use wood, it may either lighten the wood or darken the wood. So this is one of those where if you're going to try this with a wooden handle, you want to monitor it like every 10 or 15 minutes, something like that. Make sure it's not doing something to that wood. Now most of the wood covers have some sort of like an epoxy infusion into them, so nothing can actually soak into the wood. But if it's an old knife and that's been worn off, or it's not, the wood's not sealed up, you know, it could actually soak into the wood. So again, be very cautious, especially with any kind of a rust remover. Make sure and monitor your knife. Let me get a little more solution in there, and I'm going to let it soak for about an hour. Okay, so I've pulled the knife out after about an hour of soaking. When I pluck it out of there, I got a pair of tongs. I get it out of there, hold it under the faucet, rinse it off. I think this stuff is non-toxic, but the less of it on my skin, the better, I guess. You could wear gloves if you wanted to. But I just wanted to show you. This is after an hour of soaking. You can see how dark that blade is. That's the stuff I'm wiping off of it. But you can also see it's starting to cut through that rust too. Now this knife was heavily rusted. So at this point you can wipe it off. You could actually start cleaning on it if you wanted to. But Yeah, you can see awful dark, but it is cutting through the rust. It's looking better. We will be able to get the rest of this black off of it when we use our rubbing compound. That's what we look like after an hour. Now if we look down in here, you see it's starting to cut some of that rust out of there. So to help it along down in there, now I did say don't use sandpaper, but down in here where it doesn't show, it doesn't hurt to use a little sandpaper. So let's just wipe this out. See, getting some of that stuff out of there. Just got an old piece of sandpaper. I think this is like 400 grit, but just an old piece here. You can kind of help it along down in there and loosen it up. Hit it with the sandpaper a little bit. And we're going to let it soak some more. So we pay attention to areas like right here. We can get it to focus here. Right in here, you can see some rust right in there. Again, that's not, you don't see that. You're not really going to scratch it. Here's my smaller screwdriver here. You can actually take and scrub on that just a little bit, loosen it up, remove what you can. All of these stages that I'm doing, you can repeat them over and over until you get the results that you want. And typically I would have just started with evaporust. I wouldn't have even done it in the mineral oil first, but I just wanted to show you the effects of the mineral oil. If you get the back springs exposed, again, to help it along, you can scrape along there a little bit. Help it get cut through the rust as it soaks. Okay, so you can see we're slowly removing that rust. So I'm going to throw it back in here. Oh, let me show you. You can see the stuff down in the rust remover. That floating on top, that's the oil, the mineral oil. But you can see it's getting dark and dirty down in there, so it's working. So let's just throw it down in there, and we're going to let it soak for several hours. Well, the knife is soaked for a total of about 8 hours in the rust remover. And if you can see here, there's a lot of dirt down into the bottom of it. See if I move that, maybe you can see some of that dark stuff down in the bottom. You can see the color has turned from a clear to a brownish color. And let's take a look at the knife. Get a clean paper towel here so you can see what all has happened. You can see how dark that blade is. So the longer you leave it in there, why, the more it darkens it. But it does remove the rust. Now you'll see the covers, different kind of metal. I don't know if that's aluminum or just what that is. Doesn't seem to discolor it, but especially on these old carbon steel blades, it really does darken them. It's kind of hard to see because it's so dark, but there really is no more rust on there, the thick rust like we did have. Pull these blades out quick. And what's nice is to get rid of this rust before it starts any kind of pitting on the metal. That's the danger of rust. If the blades get all pitted in that, Why, you can't you can't restore it to mint condition, that's for sure. Not much you can do if it pits. You can see there, most of the rust is off of it. And I think this was the blade that was really bad. It was really thick on here. You can see that there. A lot of the rust gone. So we're going to have to use our cleaning compound and get the cleaning on it. One caution on the rust remover, and even with using the cleaning compound, is, I think this knife has it, yeah. See, on this knife it's got that blade etching on it. This knife needs cleaned up just a little bit, but it obviously wasn't in bad shape as that one. I would probably not put this knife down into Evapo-Rust, because I'm afraid of what it would do to the etching there. Of course, it would blacken the blade, so then you'd have to remove that. In the process of removing all that black patina off of it, you'd probably take off that blade etching. So if anything, if I was to soak it, I might, you know, if the back springs and down inside was really bad, I might tape this blade off and set it down in like that. But, you know, keep that etching away from the Evapo-Rust or the rust remover. Now, if you'll say, remember, near the beginning, I said we probably shouldn't be using sandpaper on the blades because it'll scratch them. And since this is a demonstration knife, let's just go ahead and take some sandpaper. And this is just a scrap piece I had. I don't know. Okay, this is 1000 grit, although it's a little bit worn. Let's just take a piece of 1000 grit, sand on this blade just a little bit and see what happens. That's just using it just a little bit. It removes a lot of that stuff. You can't really see the scratches yet, but we'll use this just a little bit. And then on the reverse side, we'll start with the rubbing compound and clean it with the rubbing compound. We'll just see what the difference is. Okay, there you can see just a little bit of rust yet on the blade there. Actually, this 1000 grit didn't do too bad of a job. It's not overly scratched. So if you are going to use this, if you're going to go horizontal with it, go that way for a while and then go vertical with it. That'll help take out any scratch lines that you might end up with. And I did do a video on this knife here. Is this the one? I think this is a knife. I did a 4-part series on this old knife, and I went into detail how I sanded these bolsters and the best way to do it. It's okay if you do this, just be prepared to take some time here, because it does take some time, especially if it does scratch. But basically you use like this 1000 grit, you get it down as best you can, alternating horizontal and vertical, and then, you know, step up to or step down, step up, I guess, step up to a higher grit, like a 2000 grit or something like that, and go back and forth. But I guess what I wanted to say, it's hard to see the scratches on this old blade because the old blade has been used and you still got all that black stuff on it. But if you took a blade, you know, a nice clean blade like that, and tried to sand on it, wow, you would leave some pretty nasty scratches in there. It just wouldn't look right. But again, this is a project knife. If you want to see about sanding and how to get your blades to look almost brand new, these bolsters were in very bad shape when I got them. I sanded and sanded on them, and they look pretty good now. But that's why, go out and buy a project knife. Well, before we get into any more cleaning, I'll just point out here that I use a Dremel 3000 rotary tool. And, you know, Dremel is, well, it's a well-known name brand, and it comes with all kinds of different cleaning attachments to it. There's other brands that you can buy. And one of the things I use is, this is one of the instruments that comes with it, just a little wire brush. And I can use this on the tangs. I really like to use the brush on the tangs to clean them off so you can read tang stamps and such. I have 3 different types of felt wheels here. This one here is conical, and it's very nice because it's pointed, so you can get into more precise areas with it, such as like getting down onto that shield right there. Also, I can lay it sideways, and you'll see me doing it on this blade here. Lay it down sideways like that. This one seems to be a little bit more aggressive, and I usually start out with this one because it's a little more aggressive and helps remove that stuff a little easier. Then I can switch to this bigger wheel, and I like this. And all of these just screw into a little attachment like this, because to polish around the tangs and that, you can get there and you can see that pokes through a little bit, but that's well above that bolster, so you don't have to worry about hitting that bolster with the metal post. And then usually when I'm finishing up, I use a felt pad like this. And this one usually gives you the most even cleaning and polishing. So that's usually the last one that I use. Now, I bought a whole bag of these off of Amazon for like $8 or $9, and I've used a lot of them. So you can check Amazon and get a whole big bag of them. I will say they are not as high a quality as if you bought the ones from Dremel. And there's another company that makes them, then you can find them in Walmart, and you get 4 or 5, 6 pieces in just a little box, and they're like $4 or $5. They're higher quality, but as many of these as I go through, I'd go broke if I bought those. So the one complaint I have, especially on this one here, is it seems to throw a lot of little threads around, and you can see them there. You'll see them in the video as when I use this. So that's kind of a little pain, but for the price I'm paying for them, well, hey, who can complain about that? Also, I have, 3 different little sizes of screwdrivers here for poking and prodding in and around. You can have a brass brush, a toothbrush, just all kinds of things that, Q-tip. Sometimes I use a Q-tip on this shield, especially if you got really nice covers like this one, and say that shield was bad, you can use a Q-tip, use your polishing compound on that to clean it, hopefully. You got to be careful when you're using the rotary tool. You get to going too fast and not paying attention, and something like that, you can slip off and hit the cover, and you can damage the cover. So you do want to be careful. Now, the last word I can think of on rust remover is, again, with the Evaporust, and now I'm testing different covers with this WD-40 rust remover, but with like bone, the metal, I've not had any problem with that affecting it. But again, word of caution, if you have wood handles, proceed carefully, okay, and monitor what's going on. All right, so let's clean off these tang stamps real quick. You usually don't have to press very hard, just lightly rub it on there, and there you can see it cleans that tang stamp right off. Imperial, Providence, Rhode Island, USA. So based on this tang stamp, it's one of their later ones, not a real early one. It gets kind of complicated when you're working behind the camera here. Try this left-handed. The other good thing about doing this is, you know, that might be rubbing up in there, and that'll affect your walk and talk too, so. But yeah, makes a big difference. Now, I would not want to use this wire brush out on the blade itself, because again, it would scratch it up. You see that dirty oil come out of there? You do want to wear, if you don't wear glasses, you want to wear some safety glasses using this little brush, because little pieces of wire at times will fly off of it, so you don't want to get something like that stuck in your eye. There you go. And you can see those patent numbers.